This is what I argue in a book called How Jesus Became God, which is that the during Jesus' lifetime, I argue that Jesus didn't think about himself as God, didn't call himself God. Disciples didn't think he was God. What happened was when his disciples came to believe that he was raised from the dead, they thought that not only was he raised from the dead, it's not that his body just came back to life. He actually went up to heaven and he's living with God now. There were lots of ancient people who thought that various individuals had gone up to the heavenly realm to live in the divine realm. And when they thought that, they thought the person became divine. The person became a god. And so I think the original Christians thought that Jesus had been made a god at his resurrection. And what ends up happening is that Christians think and think and think about this, that Jesus is God, and they start pushing the moment back farther and farther. So first they thought it was at the resurrection. Then we have evidence that there were Christians who thought that Jesus became God at his baptism. That when he's baptized, the voice from heaven says, "You are my son, today I have begotten you." So he becomes the Son of God at his baptism. Then they thought about it more, and they thought, well, it just wasn't divine during his public ministry or just after his resurrection. He must have been divine from the time he was born. And so then they later start telling stories of a virgin birth, where he doesn't have a human father, he has a divine father. So he's literally the Son of God, because God makes Mary pregnant. Then they think about it more, and they think, well, it wasn't just God during his life. He must have existed before he came into the world. And then they develop the idea that he's a pre-existent divine being who becomes a human being. And so you can find all of these views in the Gospels, and it looks like they developed over time until Jesus ends up, much later after the Gospels, Jesus ends up not just being someone who existed before the world began, but actually one who has eternally existed and is equal with the Father. And that's when you start getting the development of the idea of